Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please look us up on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, like, and share so that you never miss an episode. If you'd like to further support us, visit patreon.com/speakingout and check out the different rewards. You'll find exclusive rewards if you sign up as a patron of the podcast. Thank you for your support, and let's get into the show. Are we a society of trauma voyeurists? What do we mean by trauma voyeurism? Trauma voyeurism is the practice of making another person's pain, misfortune, or body public domain. Welcome to our podcast. We want to thank our patrons who make this podcast possible, and we thank you as always.
We sure do. We thank you for listening, and we thank you for sharing also.
Absolutely. So this definition comes from the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, NSVRC. Comes right off of their website, nsvrc.org. This is a really good website, very informational. This article is actually very recent. It's from last month. We're in November, so it's from September.
Yeah,
September
but we're
16th.
Hardly in November, so,
right?
Yeah.
So September 16th, and the title of the article is "The Prevalence of Trauma Voyeurism." I'm just going to read this first paragraph, and then we're going to jump into our thoughts. And last week we talked about voyeurs, video voyeurs, who plant cameras all over the place. This epidemic of hidden cameras. They are everywhere. For the purpose of sexual gain. Here's the first paragraph in this article. Viral content is the most prevalent form of media in our current day and age. Videos, stories, and photos can span the globe within a matter of seconds through the reach and accessibility of technology. Viral content tends to be eye-grabbing, shocking, or outlandish, and acts as a form of entertainment that feels like news or current events. However, much of our obsession with viral content has to do with trauma voyeurism, which not only perpetuates harm, but often marks its victims so they may forever be remembered through the event. As such, trauma voyeurism and viral content breaches their privacy in fundamental ways. Trauma voyeurism is the practice of making another person's pain, misfortune, or body public domain. And then it went into the 2014 leaking of the nude celebrity pictures. We had, oh my goodness, there was Lindsay Lohan, there was Jennifer Lawrence, there was a whole bunch of them.
There were, and I like how this article explains this voyeurism, this trauma voyeurism, because I think unless we step back and really stop and really take into account what this does to a person.
Yeah.
We you kind of glide over it and think, okay,
what's the big deal?
Not a big deal. This affects people's lives in big ways.
I think we're programmed to think that there's a difference between consuming things on a computer and actually physically harming somebody,
right.
raping somebody,
right.
hurting somebody in some way. And the thing is, there isn't.
No.
Trauma is trauma. And in a lot of ways, what's consumed over the computer is actually worse.
It is, because you can, I always think you can repeat it. You can watch
right.
over and over
and it's seen
and
by
over and
millions
over.
of people.
And how this article explained, this kind of stuff can be spread in seconds across the world. So you don't have just one or two people viewing this now. You have millions that are viewing this. And someone, I also like how it explained, has to do with someone suffering. Or, in some way, their nudity, their privacy.
Yeah.
You've taken something that is a part of them, and now it's spread worldwide. And how do you come back from that? How do you... I
don't know that you ever do.
It was traumatizing for me, Jimmy, when your dad's name made the local newspaper. That, to me, was traumatizing.
And you didn't do anything wrong.
I didn't do anything wrong. I remember going to your school, talking to the principal and superintendent, asking for your kids to be shielded in case
Yeah.
others would make fun or be asking questions or, mocking that your dad is going to prison, your dad was in jail, blah, blah, blah. It was so traumatizing for me to walk the halls of my work where, it was embarrassing to think so many people now knew something that I didn't even grasp, that we weren't even able to compute. Here's something where most often, probably forcibly, someone's forced to pose for a picture and they regret it all their lives.
Or even if, I mean, take the forcible part of it away. In the cases of celebrities,
right, or
that was their own
right.
images, videos, for whatever their own personal use consumption was for. That whatever, it's not really my business because they're
and
not
it
breaking
isn't
the law.
our business.
But it's their privacy, and that's the
Right.
thing. Like when you're in your home, and you have images stored on a device, your own personal device, you never in a million years ever want to give consent for the whole world to view that,
Right.
Unless you explicitly give consent,
Right.
which some
Exactly.
people do.
It
Whatever.
just-
Again,
right.
that's their business. But for people whose privacy is invaded in that horrific of a way, it's incredibly traumatizing. And here's the point that we want to make, and it's the point that that this organization is making. People thrive on this stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They love it.
Oh, yeah.
They want to consume it. You know how many searches are out there for celebrity nudes?
Oh, yeah.
You know,
And
people
they
are
don't just
looking
want
for
to
this.
consume it, but want to spread it.
Right.
Talk about it. People take joy in things like that. And it seems to be very joyful for people to see others suffer.
Yeah.
Whether it's emotionally,
Exactly right.
mentally, physically, just suffering kind of intrigues and brings joy to some people.
Yeah.
I don't understand that, but I know it's true. We've seen society take a big swing. When I was a kid, we had no way of this, of course, being spread all over the world.
Not like
This
it is
kind of
now.
stuff.
Yeah,
No.
not anywhere like
And
it is now.
Did this go on? Probably to a degree, but we didn't know about it. We didn't thrive on it. When we went to the movies, it was Disney movies. My first movie I ever saw was Cinderella, and I remember that. So, but
I feel
now-
like it was a shameful thing back then too. If you intentionally tried to wreck
was.
somebody's
Oh,
life
yeah.
by taking
Oh.
taking compromising photographs and hanging them up on lockers, like that was a shameful thing to do. It wasn't cool,
No.
like people actually stood up and frowned upon it. Now it's celebrated.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like
Oh.
it's why we call it viral
It's
content.
there's parties being thrown to watch stuff like
People
this.
love it. They
Yeah.
love consuming
Yeah.
it.
Right.
They love seeing and witnessing trauma.
Well, there are TV shows. There are dramatizations, I guess I could say, replays of police batterings on people, people beating dogs and things. And as soon as something like that comes up in my news feed on my phone, it's like I get sick. I literally get sick.
But look how many
it's-
millions of
oh, yeah.
views each of those videos has.
It's true. People really, I don't know if it's curiosity at first, and then kind of get hooked on it, which
Yeah,
is
I don't know.
really bizarre and weird. That's all.
It is, and I think there's a genesis for it, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. As this kind of unfolds, but this issue of trauma voyeurism, I think we really need to realize it's here. It's here to stay. It's present. We have now algorithms that are specifically designed to perpetuate and enhance and mushroom this trauma voyeurism. Like our videos don't go viral.
I know.
I mean, I don't have a single
Yeah.
video anywhere that's viral.
No.
What would be considered viral?
Yeah.
We might get on the high end 10,000 views, 15,000 if we're doing really good. But which videos get into the millions almost every single time? Trauma videos,
yeah.
police beatings, police brutality. People watch it. They actually watch it, and they're like, and I feel like it does something inside of people too. You know, watching these events unfold, watching other people's trauma, it does something inside of you, and it programs you, and it makes people, some people it makes really anxious and angry. Look at all the riots. This is a prime example of this too. This trauma voyeurism, the effects that it had on people when the country was on fire. There were all these riots everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
And I remember putting a comment just lamenting that people's businesses and homes were being burned to the ground. Innocent people, their homes and businesses were literally being burned to the ground. So they were out of work.
Right.
Their workers were out of work. Their businesses are literally torched to the ground. Their homes literally burnt to the ground.
Yeah.
And I remember putting a post about that, and multiple advocates were bouncing me for it. Like, well-respected people. And they're like, well, people have insurance and they can always rebuild. You know, don't you understand people's pain? Then burn your own buildings down. Burn your own business. If you're that pissed at the world,
It's just
burn your own house down.
Yeah.
Burn your own business down. You know what I mean?
I shake my head because I don't get it. I guess.
But I think we're just so
I
entrenched
know.
in this
Yeah.
trauma that we don't even realize how traumatic it is to other people. So we consume it, and we're like, yeah, burn it down, burn the houses down, show them what it is.
And
you
you're
know,
right.
because
And
they're
that-
consuming all
yeah.
these videos on George
Oh,
Floyd
yeah.
and police brutality,
Yep.
which is awful. I mean, I am not condoning police brutality whatsoever.
No.
I think it's awful. I think it's horrific. I think George Floyd, that whole event should have caused outrage. People should have been upset about that. That's not my point, though. My point is we're consuming this video of a cop murdering a man over and over and over, and it's breaking people. It's breaking people.
It
It's
is.
making them so angry, so uncompassionate that respected advocates are like, they have insurance. Let them rebuild their buildings. I'm like, what?
I just think
in
you're
God's
right,
name?
Jimmy. I think probably viewing something like that over and over and over again desensitizes us.
It does?
Yeah. Now, I truthfully did not watch the video. I never will.
Yeah.
It's just a place where I can't go. That's all. I know what I want to see. That's not something my eyes want to see. I didn't listen to any of, I just didn't go there. That's all. So, but I would think that even kids, when you think about it, growing up with these video games where there's stabbings and murders and the kung fu-y type of punch the guy in the eye and knock him out and make him bleed, and knocking people over, driving them into walls and all that, I really do think it does something to children.
Yeah, I mean, there are studies on this that
Yeah.
show. I mean, they even reference it in this article that
So when you're
young
seeing
people
real
consume it.
life people, real life,
Mm-hmm.
when you're taking something that is so private, and I often think of like these nude pictures of children, underage
Mm-hmm.
children, who either don't know any better or were put in a very, very bad situation where pictures were taken of them, and they get their life together later on, and then somebody blackmails them with these pictures. It's devastating.
Well, I mean,
It's devastating.
I've talked about this. I mean, years ago, I wrote blogs about this. There are entire YouTube channels that are dedicated to underage little girls that are in two-piece swimsuits that were taken against their knowledge, against
Right.
their will. What these people are doing is they're collecting these videos off of people's public Facebook pages where parents post videos when they went to the beach, and they're
Right.
like,
Yeah.
which, I mean, there's nothing sexual about these videos
No.
whatsoever, but people are taking these videos and they're putting entire YouTube channels together, and my understanding is it's not illegal to do it because there's no sexual content. They're fully clothed, so to speak. They're wearing swimsuits, but
Swimsuits,
their
right.
genitalia, it's all
Right.
covered up.
Right.
And there are entire YouTube channels that are dedicated to things like barely legal
Well, they put
sexy.
names to these children,
It's all this
candy,
gross stuff.
all these names. Your dad was involved with stuff like that, for
Absolutely.
Pete's sake. Your dad, I can remember him being yelled at when we were at Laurel Hill State Park about him taking pictures of young girls across the way. I don't know what he was going to do with them, but to me, I mean, they caught on right away and they screamed at him, "Stop it! You have no right to be doing this. Quit it." What was he going to do with those pictures? What did he do with them? So
Yeah,
things like
nobody
this,
knows.
and when I don't know if I, as an adult, saw my picture that had been taken against my will as a child, and you know how parents think it's cute, take little nude pictures of kids, and or within their diapers, little things.
Which is fine. I mean, we have a picture of
Right.
my oldest, she's 11. She was a baby at the time. But we have a picture in our bathroom upstairs. The guests of our house don't use our bathroom.
Right. And I was going to say,
It
you
never
do
has
not
gone
have
online.
that public. That's for you. That's an adorable little, and I
They
know
had
which
it was
picture
these
is.
little
Yeah.
bubbles.
I
So they were
remember
like
that,
these plastic
yeah. It was
balls.
so cute.
There was a bathtub
Yeah.
beside her.
I know, it's cute.
And she's
It's
turned.
adorable.
Her
Yeah.
front's not exposed, but
No.
she's turned. And, she was, I don't know, probably, I'm going to say 6 months
Just
old.
barely sitting up, yeah. But
So,
the wrong person to get that photo, put it in a sexual content. When your daughter, let's say she's in a Christian college studying to be a professor or whatever, and that picture would be exposed, someone gets a hold of that, would devastate her.
Absolutely.
Would devastate
Yeah.
anybody, and it's wrong. But that's what's being done.
yeah.
It's
But it's all kinds of traumas, too. It's
Oh,
not just
yeah.
sexual. And this is, I want to
No.
read these couple paragraphs because they're so powerful.
right.
Again, this is from the same article. This is The Prevalence of Trauma Voyeurism by the National Sexual Violence Resource Center. We'll link to this in the description. I'm going to read from it. Trauma voyeurism has arisen a new genre of entertainment at the expense of those featured. As Paula Ackman writes, the consumption of and fascination with distressing images and videos that showcase someone's suffering is referred to as trauma voyeurism, or sometimes contentiously as trauma porn. Trauma voyeurism does not just happen online and in the news, but is also a mainstay component in movies. Studies have shown that the constant bombardment of traumatic images such as sexual violence in movies impacts the way children understand and respond to others' suffering. Trauma voyeurism exploits the suffering and vulnerability of a victim for the purpose of securing viewership, often by regarding a victim's body, privacy, name, and pain as public domain, with zero consideration for its impact on that victim. Trauma voyeurism is not new. It's ingrained in the culture of American television, news broadcasting, and popular media. B is the glorification of domestic violence on the Jerry Springer Show, which aired for 27 years. Name another show that's ever aired
Right.
that long.
Oh, gosh.
Or the highly popular true crime series, which trivialized murder victims in cinematic dramatizations of their death. Trauma garners views. And yet, while we desire to passively consume the trauma of others, we do so while simultaneously remaining ignorant to what it means to be trauma-informed. So well put. I think we're really reprogramming the way people respond to trauma because we're so consumed with it that there's no empathy left. And so a school fight breaks out and kids are beating the living daylights out of each other. What's the first thing that happens?
You have a big crowd. People
Yeah,
are cheering. They're
and-
cheering. They're cheering. They love it.
And what else? What
Yeah.
comes out?
Well, oh yeah, that. Of course.
Get it on
yeah.
film.
Yeah.
This is going to go viral. You
Yeah.
hear that in YouTube videos,
I shouldn't laugh, but it's true. It is true.
It's gross.
It's true.
And this is
Yeah.
how our kids are programmed to respond to other people's trauma. Get the camera out. This will go viral.
Yeah, you're right. That's
Not,
the
my
point of
God,
it.
what is happening?
Yeah.
I need to step in and
Oh,
defend them.
No,
We
there's-
laugh at
there's
it.
Not that. Yeah.
Kids are laughing at other people being exploited and traumatized. And then you mentioned the exploitation, exploiting others.
Yeah.
I actually discovered that there is a new bill in Pennsylvania, which I love, and I actually emailed this representative to try to get her on the podcast. But she's writing a law called Lindsay's Law, and it's about this young woman in 2016 here in Pennsylvania, Lindsay Pacone. She was contacted in September 2016. Lindsay Pacone was contacted by someone on the social media application Snapchat, threatening her and demanding she send sexually explicit photos. Pacone, 21, did as she was asked. A day later, she took her own life. Quote, "Before someone else ruins my life, I'm ruining mine," her suicide note read, in part. This is tragic.
It breaks my heart. It does. And this isn't a lone instance, as we know. We've heard of other things like this, where people will take a fragment of information, a picture, a video, whatever, of a person's life and totally destroy them with it. Just totally destroy them with it by sharing it. And people mock, have fun. They take glory in seeing people go through pain, actually. That's what it's all about.
I mean, along this line, with the sextortion stuff, this has been in the news. Unfortunately, not as much as it needs to be. But Pornhub, the biggest supplier of online pornography, they had zero type of a screening process for people uploading videos to the website. So anybody could upload any video they wanted to Pornhub.com.
It just blows me away. It really does.
There were videos of these minor children who were trafficked, and they were abused in the most brutal way. And this was being uploaded and consumed by the millions per video. And
is it any wonder we have a sick society?
People love violence. They love trauma. Is it
any wonder, though, that we have a very sick, demented society? And I'm just going to put it out there. I think that's sick. I think it's demented when we take pleasure in watching someone else's pain.
Yeah,
or when we take pleasure
suffer
in destroying someone's life.
Yeah.
In any way. This is just one more way it's being done.
So I said I was going to talk about the genesis a little bit, at least in my opinion. This is it's certainly not well researched, and I don't know that there is research. I've looked. I've not seen anything about why this is trending. Incidentally, none of the articles that I've read reference what I think is probably the biggest contributor, and that is back in 1978, we had this docu-series that came out called Faces of Death. You hadn't heard of Faces of Death. I was a passive consumer as a child of Faces of Death. One of my older siblings had a friend who loved this series, Faces of Death. This was in the, it had to have been the mid 80s. So I was probably 7, 8, 9 years old.
This makes me feel like a terrible parent.
You are a terrible parent.
I'm terrible. Look at this. My kid is watching Faces of Death and I don't know it.
Yep.
Wow.
Awful.
No, seriously. This is
awful.
I
think these were times when you were whisked away on vacation. And then us little kids were left, from my age on down.
Totally.
The rest of us were left home alone
with
my older siblings to sit.
Okay.
So, not really much choice that you had in that. But I want to read this paragraph about this because this is just, it's incredible to me. He said he was tired. That's the producer of Faces of Death. He said he was tired of doing films about animals and wanted to try something more ambitious. Why not do something about humans getting killed? Leclerc said. The man gave him a weird look. This is a Japanese guy who came over and pitched the idea of doing a show of animals being brutally killed. So the guy gave him a weird look, but he didn't say no. Leclerc was asked to put together a quote-unquote sizzle reel, a sample of his concept. He convinced a doctor friend to let him into a morgue where he shot an autopsy, cutting it together with other graphic footage, including seals being clubbed to death. When his prospective clients flew in from Japan, he took them into a screening room and showed them the results. Quote, "They just went bat blank crazy," he says, still gleeful. They were so excited. So the author of this article, this is on The Guardian, theguardian.com. The title of the article is "Banned in 46 Countries. Is Faces of Death the Most Shocking Film Ever?" This is by John, I guess you pronounce that Fecile, Fecile.
Yeah, looks like it.
Very good article, and I think he kind of gets to the heart of this issue that, this was so shocking to people that this movie was banned all over the place, and that's what sold it out here in the United States. And he mentioned Quentin Tarantino, who was young at the time. He was a young guy working in a movie store, and Quentin Tarantino was excited about it. He was like, yeah, this movie is always sold out. We have 2 copies, and it's always sold out.
You know what struck me when you shared this, which is the second time with me, when he said he had previously done movies with animals.
Mm-hmm. And that wasn't bad enough.
No.
That wasn't gruesome enough. People wanted more.
Isn't that how all of this stuff progresses? When you think about it, with a pedophile, what happens? Well, they start out with the thought, then the thought goes into action, okay? A murder always has to begin in the mind and is carried out.
Yep.
Any evil is done that way. Here we have the clubbing of seals, the brutal death of animals. That wasn't enough. So now they get the brilliant idea, let's do it with people. So I'm wondering what's next.
I don't know.
What's next?
I mean it's a valid question, because what's happened now.
Yeah.
I think what the difference is here you have a producer who clearly is like, he is thriving off of the shock factor, and he's purchasing this footage from incidentally news crews, from media outlets where they have this footage of people actually dying, and he would pay an exorbitant amount of money. He would purchase the footage, and then he would include that. And then he shifted that and started doing a hybrid series where he would show actual footage, and then he hired Hollywood actors, and then it would show like the close-up of people's faces, which was all acting, but the consumers didn't know that.
Right.
And then it would pan back and it would go to another view that showed the actual death of people. So it was kind of this hybrid, like really bizarre model, but he was maximizing the shock value, getting as much mileage as he could out of these shots. So that was back in the late 70s, early 80s. Clearly the shock factor wasn't enough, because then we started saying, okay, well now we got to make things go viral, and we got to do it instantly. So we developed algorithms that picked up on this stuff.
Right.
Where the algorithms, the computers now know what constitutes viral footage, and it's, I don't know what the percentage is, but I guarantee that a vast majority of the viral content is traumatic, other people's trauma. It's these traumatic, the kids being beaten behind the schoolyard, the police brutality videos. Those are off the charts popular. Those videos are wildly
minds are being poisoned
popular
when you think about it.
So yeah, when you ask that question, what's next? What's the next level? I don't really know, and I know that we better start teaching our kids to have compassion on people. And I know this is like not comparing apples and oranges. There's a correlation. They are 2 very different things, but it's not what I'm trying to do. But I think about these massive pileups and people dying in these car crashes. And I've talked about that before on this podcast, but it drives me insane when we see these massive pileups. The most recent one was this February in Houston. There was on I-35 this massive pileup when they got black ice.
Right.
And there are these
excuse me,
these YouTube videos of truck drivers of all people whipping their phones out and like, oh no, here comes another one, and it slams into all these cars, and people are dying. There were all kinds of fatalities, and these guys are filming it, and one guy, I've watched sections of this. I'm certainly not loving watching these videos or anything, but I've watched sections of these videos. And there's one where this truck driver's like, oh no, there's nothing we can do. Nothing we can do. And I'm like, you idiot, you have a CB radio.
Exactly.
There's a
Call
ton
for
you can
help.
do.
Yeah.
You can holler back to people. Cars that are coming on the opposite side who are not involved on the accident side, they stop. They're out of their cars with their cameras. There was a time, you remember when there were cops ahead? And people would come at you. What was the universal signal that there's a cop ahead? What would people do?
Get on the CB.
No, in
flash
cars.
The lights.
Flash your
the
headlights.
lights. Yeah, that
right?
still happens. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Flash the lights. Yeah.
What about accidents? That there was a time when people would flash their lights if there was an accident ahead to warn people to slow down. That was the universal signal that said something's up ahead, slow down. Now, people stop at the scene of the accident on the opposite side, and they pull their cameras out because they want to get that viral content. It's insanity what we've become.
Oh, it's done
barbaric.
with fires. Think about it. They're with tornadoes.
Sure.
Any disaster like that of
people driving the wrong way down the interstate. They don't call 911.
I hadn't
they get their
really
phone
thought
out.
about it a lot, Jimmy, till we're doing this actual podcast on this trauma voyeurism. But there is a joy in it for people.
But
a thrill.
And here's how we know this. The purpose of pulling your camera out when there's a traumatic accident or school bullies or whatever is not to consume that content on your own device, to never share that with anybody, right?
Yeah.
How do we know that? Because it's out there.
First thing they do is share it. Oh yeah.
So it's not like these people are filming it.
Why would you film it
because
anyway?
they're like,
why?
oh well, this isn't to put in the public domain. No. This is for my own viewership.
Wow. No.
That's not what's going on. So we know that for a fact, that the reason people are pulling their phones out is because they want to make it viral. They want to put it in the public domain.
I think, one more branch in the tree of all of this that we talk about compiled under our speaking out on sex abuse. It's all interrelated in some way, shape, or form. We can have people who disagree, but I will agree the mindset, I still say it, is there. It's a wrong mindset, is evil. When we take joy in harming someone intentionally, and when we view these videos and we take sheer joy out of watching somebody being murdered, being stabbed to
having
death,
businesses burned down, right? Car accidents.
There's something wrong with us.
Right.
There's something wrong with the very core, the heart of man. When we did the whole series on the we'll know them by their fruit, everything can kind of relate back to that. I think that was a really good illustration as to what's happening to people. And I think we need to be on guard that we don't fall into this ugly, nasty black hole that it is, because that's what's happening.
Yeah.
It's mind poisoning.
It's awful. So we don't want to leave you with, all that depressingness.
But we do need an awareness.
Right. We absolutely have to have an awareness. But, what's the flip side of that, and what's the hope in this? Well, we have people like Representative Tomlinson, who is doing an incredible job, and she's standing up to human trafficking, human sex trafficking. She's writing this bill, or wrote this bill, the Karen's Law, making it illegal, which I still can't believe it's not illegal to use sextortion, but it's illegal to do it. She's making it illegal to do it, and I think that's going to get a lot of traction.
I'm thankful and proud of her.
We need to dig our heels in,
right?
And there are people doing it.
Right.
So I think that's the encouraging thing, is that I think the pendulum's going to swing back where people are like, holy cow, what have we become? Like, this
have
is
hope.
nuts.
I do. I look locally here at parents your age and children that your children's age, and I am greatly encouraged by what I see.
Because they look
Honestly,
after each other.
I am
Yeah.
so encouraged.
Yeah, I am too. Yeah.
Oh my word, the pendulum is swinging, at least locally, and I know it's got to be swinging across the nation
Mm-hmm.
that way. The problem is we, through the media, hear only stuff like this. We're not
Because
hearing
trauma sells.
right, and niceness, kindness,
Mm-hmm.
compassion doesn't sell yet. I hope there will be a day when it will again.
Yeah, I mean it does to an extent,
Yeah.
but usually it's the social experiments, the fake, the stuff that people they're editing it in a way or scripting it in a way where it's pegging the algorithms and it's going to
Yeah.
go viral.
Yep.
The genuine kindness, acts of kindness, you just don't hear about them because they're not.
Listen to K-Love,
Yeah,
a
they're
plug
not
for K-Love radio station.
not that viral.
I play K-Love. I count myself very blessed because at my workplace I can play that and listen to it. They always have positive stories that are wonderful. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, we will grab onto that pendulum, we'll weigh
Yeah,
it down,
right.
and we're going to
Tuck and
yank it back
pull
the other
and-
way
yeah.
where people have common decency and they
Yeah.
respect people's
Yes.
privacy. We're trauma informed, and we realize like there are long-lasting, devastating
It's
implications
horrific,
and consequences when we put people's trauma into the public domain. So let's not be consumers of it, and we've got to dial that way back. Thank you guys for tuning into this episode, and we'll catch you next round.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. A special thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. Please help us get the word out by searching for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. Please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and check out the rewards our patrons receive.